Hey guys, Vice Fister here. So Evoker got some changes this week and the Devastation spec is now dead. This video is going to be about picking a new main, and I'm totally kidding, but I do have some really choice words and I'm totally on the fence with some decisions made in this latest patch. Up until now, I was happy with virtually every single change the devs have made towards Evoker and thought they did a good job with improving the spec over time. Despite the smooth gameplay and power being clearly propped up by some very strong talent interactions, the spec was still hiding a deep, dark secret that we slowly began to push out of view. Or rather, the Devastation developers pushed out of view, and it's finally reared its big ugly head. Devastation Evoker's main resource has been broken since day one of alpha. Similar to DK runes or even energy, this resource passively fills over time and has no direct way to generate it. Instead, our fillers generate Essence Burst, which allows a free use of a spender ability that would have otherwise required Essence to use. As any other spec with two different yet similarly functioning resources, the general goal for efficiency would be to avoid overcapping Essence while also generating and spending as many Essence Bursts as possible. This idea of building, spending, not overcapping resource has been a core tenet of WoW since its inception. This is the rule of resources. From my first day playing Evoker, it was immediately apparent that our main DPS cooldown, Dragon Rage, fundamentally broke this rule. DR causes your spenders to always proc an EB, and a spender used with said EB was always strictly more powerful than an Essence casted spender due to Titanic Wrath. This became fact. The idea of EBs being more valuable is a great design choice to incentivize you to maximize your EBs, which Sims later would prove that during DR, you prefer to only spend EBs so much so that you would completely ignore Essence during it. During DR, you could be at full Essence and still prefer to hit an instant filler like Azure Strike to generate a guaranteed EB and then spend it. From day one, this was a glaring issue. From day one, it was complained about. Back in July, I posted this in the Evoker Discord. DR making you ignore Essence also made any Essence generating talents in the tree lose massive value to the point in which they were never taken. No big deal, right? It's alpha. This is when these issues received reiteration. A brand new spec in 2022 releasing with a fundamentally broken resource system is unacceptable, and I had always assumed this would get fixed in the many months ahead. We all did. Let's back up a bit. Early into alpha, Devastation was clearly overpowered tuning-wise. Granted, the only content available were heroic dungeons, which by default are a terrible metric for balance and mini-specs, were still almost non-functional by this point, as many talent trees were yet to exist, and the existing ones were broken. Despite this, one of the first changes Evokers received was a massive nerf to Pyre, our AoE spender, and both of the main talents that buffed it, Charge Blast and Volatility. This change was the first domino to fall, the beginning of a chain reaction. Months were passing by at this point, and Devastation Evoker changes were being made, but not a single one addressed our resource issue. More and more data and sims were collected, and all signs were pointing towards ways to put more focus on our EBs and ignore our actual essence even more, which is clearly only exacerbating the problem. The Eye of Infinity opened, and Evokers were introduced to the light of crit. It was discovered that when combining already strong talents like Eye of Infinity, Scintillation, Eternity Span, and high amounts of crit, we could observe a feedback loop of cast Disintegrate, proc Scint, cleave a second target, crit, receive EBs, and repeat. With good RNG, we could find ourselves chaining distance for 10 seconds straight in between our empowers. This became so strong, Sims showed that this combo made spamming distance so powerful that we would nearly stop casting Pyre altogether, even on reasonable target counts like 4 to 5 targets. Ignore your AoE spender and only press your single target spender even on most AoE situations, and once more another law of Warcraft was broken. What ended up happening was that we were generating so much more EB that not only would we still ignore Essence during DR, but also much more outside of it. The big upside was that many players enjoyed this looping combo of distance because the interactions felt powerful, they looked nice, and instantly smoothed out Evoker's gameplay, which was sorely needed. It didn't end there though. Scintillation received a massive buff in a more recent patch, nearly doubling its Essence Surge proc chance from 8 to 15%. This is what made Eye run out of control. Double the E-Surge procs, double the crits, double the EV gen. I made videos after the Scint buff, and you can see my sheer joy with the spec, since one of my major personal gripes was how boring and slow our single target rotation felt. At the same time of the Scint buff, Burnout was reworked. Overnight, Devastation became a proc-based spec, in which we were constantly generating instant cast Living Flames and getting fed EB procs. This was frankly a joy to play, and helped spice up our simplicity. This whole combo was clearly a massive band-aid over the wound that was Essence, but it was a damn good band-aid, and made the players happy. It fixed a lot of our problems. And again, this all was built up over the months where they ignored Essence, and expanded on buffing Essence Burst generation. It's almost like the devs stumbled into this. The fact that this Dissent combo gained even more value on 2-target cleave made me feel really strong for that niche, as when a Synth proc cleaved and crit twice, you'd get 2 EBs and your engines firing on all cylinders. Evoker ST was strong. AoE was a bit weaker with the loss of Pyre in comparison with the nerfs combined with the buffs to this combo, but boy did we slam 2-target cleave. It felt right for Devastation to excel at unique but common damage profiles like 2-target cleaves, and the community was happy about it. Despite the lingering shadow of our broken Essence resource still sitting quietly on the sideline, the many Devastation changes achieved a class developer's #1 goal, which is to make the spec feel strong, defined in its power, and operate smoothly. I'd venture as far as to say they nailed a rare feat of constant dopamine hits with the Eye of Infinity loop. Psychologically, it felt amazing to press Dissent, watch a beautiful Eternity Surge fire off, and in that second of travel time hope for a crit. Then, without even having to watch the damage crit or not, to hit the jackpot and get rewarded with a big ol' Essence Burst display pop-up. Even 2 of them if it cleaved in double crit. You were constantly rolling the dice for procs and crits, and we loved it. We didn't really care about Essence anymore. This birthed another downside. The now old Pyre nerfs and the Dissent interaction buffs made Pyre numerically perform so poorly you'd only really use it at high charge blast stacks with unusually high target counts. Not only was the damage poor, but also the fact that Pyre doesn't help generate more of itself like Dissent did, became way too tall of a hurdle to leap over. A class with a relatively weak AoE spender would never perform well on higher mythic plus keys, and that was a major worry for me. It was clear we wanted more Pyre, and it was also clear that the aforementioned combo of interactions required much more than just a number buff to Pyre. Disintegration's bar was set way up in the sky, and for Pyre to ever work how it should, you'd either have to lower that disintegration bar, or launch Pyre even higher into the sky. It was there that I realized we were at a point of no return. Pyre couldn't be raised above that bar. Unless you gave Pyre a way to generate EBs like Dissent could, Pyre would surely hit a wall without overbuffering it to ridiculous levels. And unless Pyre also gained a way to generate EBs like Dissent, it remained likely that the disintegration bar would need to be lowered. It would be a tough balancing act to keep that great feedback loop of Dissent while also making Pyre usable on your usual 4 to 5 targets, like most other AoE in the game. This balancing act would be difficult to find, but not impossible, and when you consider that Essence was still a broken resource, and that in turn we still had terrible Essence-based talents like Power Swell and Innate Magic in the general tree, we actually had a lot of different ways to find a way out and meet in the middle. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. That ridiculous Scintillation proc chance buff? Take Scint back down from 15% to 10% for example. This takes EOI's power down by a lot without removing the EB generation too much. Pair that with the volatility and Pyre buffs and we might have just found ourselves with Pyre fixed without completely losing Eye. We were already not far from a playstyle of using Dissent to generate EBs to fuel our buffed Pyres, even pre-nerf of Eye of Infinity. Even fully stacked Charged Blast Pyres weren't super far away from being usable on single target, which again could have spiced up an overly simplified rotation. Another thought of mine since very early on was to give Evokers a way to dump Essence and or EBs faster. This would not only help fix the fundamental issue of permacapping Essence during DR, but also allow the Dissent, Scint, Eye of Infinity combo to remain as it were, even if just reduced a bit, without again capping your Essence. Devastation could really lean into all the extra EBs from the Dissent combo and just give us a way to dump off extra resource when we need to. This would also cause weaker talents like Power Swell to gain value. This Essence dump idea could be fleshed out in countless ways, maybe like a new ability that consumes all available Essence for a duration buff, like more haste, maybe to pulse with heat in 25 yard range to play into that mid-range caster fantasy they're aiming for. Maybe it's a Dragon's Bellow ability that can be off GCD and cost Essence. Like a simple debuff to enemies that could cause Pyre to leave fire below its target, for example. Maybe it's a way to instantly convert Essence into making your next spender more powerful. Essence could be great again without affecting our newfound EB engine. While this may be more work to implement than simply nerfing the distant combo and buffing Pyre, keep in mind that this is the brand new spec and a major selling point for the Dragonflight expansion. They are in the process of laying a foundation for the Devastation Evoker, which is also on the lower end of complexity. Another rotational button would have been welcome, as long as it made sense and felt good to press. Then again, you could just nerf the distant combo and buff Pyre, and get much closer to fixing our long forgotten resource issue. With this latest change, Eye of Infinity is dead. This is a 66% nerf to its resource generation, which makes Titanic Wrath much weaker. It makes Feed the Flame and Causality CDR weaker, our 2P set weaker, and Guts our 2-target cleave niche. The spec is now back to playing more slowly on single target with a lot more Living Flame filler casting, and the thing I'm most unhappy about is losing our powerful 2-target cleave. When someone would ask me, Vice, what makes the Devastation worth taking to raid or high keys? And the very first strong point I'd go to was our 2-target cleave, but we just lost a key component to that. Numbers aside, this is, in my opinion, kind of disastrous for Devastation from a gameplay perspective. Sure, Pyre is massively better in comparison with this change, and is something we all really needed since our sustained AoE was on the weak side. Pyre existing like a true AoE spender needed to happen in the bigger picture. The main issue here is that rather than wait until 2 weeks from Evoker release to fix our fundamentally broken resource, they had almost 4 months of alpha and beta feedback in the Evoker Discord and on the WoW forum Evoker feedback thread. Not only did they completely avoid putting any effort into improving Essence during that time, they actually were consistently moving in the complete opposite direction by rewarding us for generating more EBs. Collectively, the Devastation Evoker community began to wholly accept Essence as more of a backup resource to EB, the real resource, and rightfully so, as that's what we were fed. Somewhere during the past 4 months, we silently agreed on EB supremacy. Nobody was complaining about how the spec felt due to Essence taking a backseat. EB filled its spot, and Essence still did do its job as a resource you pay attention to often outside of DR. If this resource system went live, players would find it a bit odd, but that it works well regardless. Yes, it was a band-aid, but it single-handedly fixed so many issues. Look, deep down we all knew a change like this probably had to happen. The issue is the timing being super late in the development process on a long-known problem. Evoker is about to launch. The expansion just 2 weeks after. They kept adding to this band-aid and finally ripped it off with very little time for iteration on it, and the job is still not even done. The essence generating talents on the tree are still too weak to take, and the EB based talents also took a big hit. Our main focus is back to essence, but it still just fundamentally feels worse than when you can use an EB. Quite frankly, a change this big to shake up almost our entire tree feels so empty without more changes alongside it. It's clear what their intention was with this change, but it's like giving us the fishbowl without the fish. Every Evoker player will tell you this feels incomplete, and that we'd fully expect to see more changes for talents, maybe reworks, and major tuning to see how our spec interacts going forward to fully flesh out the rest of our main resource. And yet, November 3rd, it's been data mined that this newest beta build is a release candidate, meaning that this is the first patch that Blizzard might launch Dragonflight with. I've been one of the more positive Devastation proponents throughout Alpha and Beta because I want this class to succeed, but I must admit this was a big hit to my enjoyment with the spec. My faith in the Devastation devs has wavered a lot by putting off the biggest change to the spec until less than a month from launch. Our beloved 2 longer cleave is no longer with us, unless we see big changes to bring this back in a different way, but this would also need to be a targeted decision by the devs. My hope is that we see a few more Devastation specific changes to talents and our spell tuning as soon as this next week, because if not, I feel like we have lost a large part of what made myself and many others love the spec. Just gotta wait and see. Let me know what you think about these changes. Keep in mind it's not all bad. and my gripes in this video are with certain choices and not on the entire picture. Do you think I should have been gutted to this extent? Are you happy we cast Distant less and replace it with more Living Flames? Do you think I'm missing a piece of the puzzle completely? I enjoy reading your opinions and I read them all, and trying to find more perspectives on things like this. So if you've enjoyed my thoughts in this video, hit the like and subscribe button. Come check us out in the Evoker class Discord to stay up to date on the newest sims and theory crafting regarding these changes. Come say hi, it's not all doom, I promise. And don't let this turn you off completely from the spec. If you enjoy it, play it. Please do. It'll be fine. Alright, thanks again, and see you next time.